the jewel in the crown, the icing on the cake, the cherry on the icing on the cake, the number 9, which they've been chasing for so long. Bang, Victor Gyökeres looks like it's going to happen. And yes, he hasn't played in the Premier League, but his goal scoring record is phenomenal in Portugal. And he did score in the Champions League as well against some big teams. So it looks like an absolutely fantastic window. Yes, they will probably look to sell some players as well. And the Eberechi Eze deal is still there floating in the background because he's open to the move and they still want to sign him.
Right, let's very quickly wrap up Arsenal then. So Gyökeres, how close to arms do we think?
Yeah, so the Gyökeres deal is really accelerating now. There's an agreement now on an initial fee between Arsenal and Sporting, which we believe to be £55 million. I think talks are still ongoing about the structure and the add-ons and the amount of add-ons, which we believe to be around £9 to £10 million. So the total fee is going to be around £64 to £65 million. This sounds a lot less than what Sporting were asking for at the start of the window. But there is a reason for this, is because this deal has moved on and there's been a breakthrough simply because Gyökeres' camp and his representatives have waived the fee that they were due. So it hasn't really impacted Arsenal in any way, but it has impacted Sporting because Sporting is still receiving the total that they would have wanted simply because the money that would have been due to Gyökeres' representatives has been waived. So hence why it looks very, very likely now that this deal is going to move really, really quickly. And look, Arsenal fly out for their pre-season tour on Saturday. Be a push if they can get it all done before then. But I'm sure that they will want Gyökeres to be featuring in some shape or form during that pre-season tour, be it flying out on Saturday or joining them while they're already out there. So Gyökeres to Arsenal feels like now it is a case of when and not if.
You mentioned Eze. We've spoken about Mosquera as well. We know the fee now, 13 million for Mosquera. You've described that as almost a bit of a project, Arms. That's what we talked about last week.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reason they've got that price is because he's only got a year left on his contract. Valencia can't be in a position where in 5 months' time he could join Arsenal for no money at all. And I think Arsenal probably went into that in negotiations and just said, look, we do want to bring him in, but it's not like we have to bring him in because we are so light in that position. They're not. They just want to strengthen in that position. And that's a kind of a position of strength Arsenal find themselves in. So they could just say, actually, don't worry, Valencia. You don't want to agree to this deal. We don't want to pay how much you want. You want £25 million. We're not going to go near to that. We'll just wait until January because then we can just speak to him anyway. And we'll just say, join us in the summer. Just see out the rest of the season in Valencia, but you'll come to Arsenal next summer. Valencia are like, no, let's do a deal.
Yeah, so the Gunners are not only focused on incomings, but they're trying to tie down important players to long-term deals as well. It was Miles Lewis-Skelly last month. Now some news on Ethan Nwaneri, young player, but he'd been linked with the move to Chelsea and so on, hadn't he? What's the latest with him? You
were talking earlier, Pete, about how impressed you've been potentially with this Liverpool transfer window. And while Liverpool and City were signing all these players, I think a lot of Arsenal fans on social media were going into meltdown about when are they going to start signing players. Their window looks pretty impressive as well. You mentioned the players that they've signed and that they want to sign, but tying down some of their real stars of the future and for now has been a big push so far in this window. Miles Lewis-Skelly, of course, has signed a new long-term contract, and it looks close now that Ethan Nwaneri will be committing his long-term future to Arsenal as well. I'm told that talks have been really advanced now between all parties. All parties are working towards striking and completing and finalising this new deal. We think it's going to be around 4 or 5 year contract. He's actually entered the final year of his contract. So this was quite emergent, I think, and particularly with a lot of clubs in the Premier League and in Europe who are really seriously looking at Ethan Nwaneri. But the information that we have is that the priority from minute one, as far as Nwaneri and Arsenal were concerned, was to extend with Arsenal. Whether it was to get, assurances of regular first team football, which I don't think Arsenal would have said, because they simply cannot do that for any player, let alone a player who's 18 years old. But clearly they know that he is definitely one for the future. He broke onto the scene last season, probably played a lot more games than even he expected to following the injury to Bukayo Saka, and really, really impressed. I think it was 9 goals in all competitions by the end of the season in not so many appearances. So he's done so well. You can see why Arsenal wanted to keep him and make sure that he didn't move on to particularly a Premier League rival. So we're expecting news and confirmation on that one sooner rather than later, I think.
Madueke looks like that one's close to being announced as well. Sam, your thoughts on Madueke? I mean, there were some sections of the fan base, protesting the move, but a very small percentage of fans, it has to be said. Why do you think that there might be some unhappy with this deal?
Yeah, I mean, I was very surprised to see, and we do have to stress it was a minority of fans, but it got close to a protest. Basically suggesting that Madueke should not sign for Arsenal. It perplexes me. I'm much higher on this deal than a lot of people, I think. I think Madueke is a better player than a lot of people realise, and he has added a lot to his game over the last couple of seasons, and I'm actually questioning Chelsea here, not Arsenal. I'm questioning why Chelsea would let a player who is finally definitely ready to play for them. And let's be honest, they've bought so many youngsters over the last 3 years that quite a lot of them have not been definitely good enough to play for a club of Chelsea's level. Madueke is most certainly there now in my eyes, and they are now suddenly ready to say goodbye to him, which is quite confusing, quite perplexing. But here we are. If there is a question about this deal, it's probably, what's the plan? What exactly are you planning to do with Madueke? Because while he has shown that he can play on the left towards the end of last season, I think we all know that Madueke sees himself as a right winger who cuts in on his left foot. That's the way of the modern game, the inverted forward, the inverted winger. So obviously Saka plays there and he is clearly better than Madueke. And up until this season, rarely gets injured. So what's the plan? Is it a 52 million backup winger? Doesn't sound right to me. Is he going to play on the left wing? Okay, he can clearly do it. But is Madueke ready to basically surrender the right wing and say, I'm a left winger now? That's where I play the majority of my minutes. These are the questions that I'm asking about this deal, not is he worth this much money? Because in a vacuum, yes, he absolutely is.
Let's remember, he's an England international. He's impressed so much that Thomas Tuchel has selected him for England and played him. Now, if you look at this deal, I'm not going to tell Arsenal fans how to feel about it. I'm just looking at it looking at Arsenal's squad and maybe what they were missing last season. Clearly, they had injury issues last season, and they probably thought, if we have injuries, and this shouldn't be seen as he's a complete backup because he will start games as well, simply because the number of games that these clubs are going to have to play next season, if they go deep in many of the competitions, they're going to need to utilize a squad and a strong squad. So you've got a player who has been semi-regular in the Premier League coming into a squad. And if you have someone like Noni Madueke in your squad, he's going to strengthen that squad. It's clear. Arsenal's squad will be stronger if Noni Madueke is in that squad, in my opinion. So on that basis alone, from what Arsenal are trying to do and from what Arsenal were missing last season, it is going to be a good signing for me. There's been all this talk about whether, how inconsistent Gabriel Martinelli was last season. Sometimes Trossard played in that position. Trossard was playing along the front 3 positions. If you suddenly have Noni Madueke coming in, that can do many things to a squad because it can give players a little kick as well and raise their level because the actual quality of the squad overall has gone up. So to me, 50 odd million, that's the going rate now, unfortunately. People will say, is that a lot of money? Every club is comparing their valuations to other players in that position. So Chelsea will say, well, Elanga's gone for this much, so Noni Madueke is worth this much. It's simple as that. Every club is doing it for every single position. So for me, like I said before, I'm not going to tell Arsenal fans how to feel about this particular deal, but to me, it looks like a good one.
So I think some of the consternation here from Arsenal fans is that they have other things on their mind, and they want striker fixed, and they want Rodrigo or Eza, and they're worried about, what kind of snowball effect a Madueke deal might have on those deals. And unfortunately, the way of the world is that transfer windows do not go in priority order. So Arsenal fans want a number 9 more than anything in the world. And I think a lot of them really just want Gyökeres in and then for the focus to go elsewhere. But they've watched 4 or 5 players come in now with Gyökeres still on ice, and they're getting worried. And I understand that, but transfer windows do not happen in priority order. That's just not how it works. So I think a lot of this kind of weird feeling from the fan base may die down once Gyökeres is stood holding the shirt. And then Madueke signs as well. And then there might be a report to say, and still in for Eza or still in for Rodrigo. And then they'll start totting it all up and going, we're getting 7 players here. This is amazing. The feeling, I think, will change around this once the the elephant in the room, that the Gyökeres thing is done.
I couldn't agree more. Let's look at Arsenal's transfer window. We talked about Liverpool's. I know I'm repeating myself here, Pete, but Kepa, a £70 million goalkeeper at one point, has come in for £5 million. He's going to be the number 2 goalkeeper at Arsenal. That is strength in that department. Martin Zubimendi and Cristhian Norgard have come in because Thomas Partey and Jorginho have left. Is that positions stronger now that they've got Norgard and Zubimendi in ahead of Partey and Jorginho? You could argue.
Yes.
As strong. Some people will say, oh, it's not because these guys were doing a certain job. We'll find out how well Zubimendi does, but from the outset, it looks like they might have strengthened in those positions. Then you're looking at, right, we need a right-sided central defender. And they look likely they're going to get one for less than £20 million all in Cristhian Mosquera from Valencia, who they've been tracking for a little while. So they're going to strengthen that position with an out-and-out central defender. Then comes the Noni Madueke deal, which we've talked about already. Will that strengthen Arsenal's squad? Yes, it will strengthen Arsenal's squad.